11 seconds. That's how far ahead of you your own brain is operating right now. In 2019, a research team at the University of New South Wales connected subjects to an fMRI scanner and asked them to make a simple choice. An artificial intelligence, reading only their neural activity, correctly predicted their decision 11 seconds before the person became consciously aware of making it. Not a guess, not a trend, a precise, repeatable prediction. Which means the thought you just had, the one that felt like yours, may have already been decided before you were even invited to the conversation. So here's the question that should genuinely unsettle you. If your brain knew first, who exactly is doing the thinking? Most people have never seriously questioned the ownership of their thoughts. The assumption is automatic and total. Thoughts arise and they are yours, your creativity, your anxiety, your ambition, your self-criticism. All of it feels authored, felt from the inside, generated by you, belonging to you. But consider what your internal monologue actually produces on a typical day. Neuroscientists estimate the average person generates somewhere between 6,000 and 70,000 thoughts per day. And the overwhelming majority of them are not original. They are repetitive, cycling through the same worries, the same self-narratives, the same loops, often with a negative bias so consistent it defies the logic of a mind genuinely trying to help itself. Why would a system designed for your survival spend the majority of its processing power making you feel inadequate, anxious, and stuck? That question has a more interesting answer than most people expect, because the evidence from neuroscience, from cognitive science, from clinical neurology increasingly suggests that the voice in your head is not simply you talking to yourself. It is the output of a biological system that is receiving, filtering, and broadcasting information through mechanisms that operate almost entirely beneath conscious awareness. Understanding those mechanisms doesn't just satisfy intellectual curiosity, it changes your relationship to every thought you will ever have. It is the difference between being inside the current and knowing how to observe it from the bank. And it starts with a medical case from 1980 that neuroscience still hasn't fully explained. In 1980, neurologist John Lorber published a case study in Science magazine under a title that stopped the scientific community cold. A university student, mathematics, IQ measured at 126, exceptional academic record, comes in for a routine scan after reporting persistent headaches. The scan reveals that 95% of his cranial cavity is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. His brain tissue, the structure that materialist neuroscience insists is the generator of all thought, memory, and personality, has been compressed into a layer barely a millimeter thick against the walls of his skull. By every conventional model of how cognition works, this person should not be able to function. He should not be able to form memories, solve equations, or hold a conversation. He was doing all three at a level most people with fully intact brains never achieve. This case doesn't prove anything mystical, but it does prove something important. Our current model of where thinking happens is incomplete. The brain is clearly involved in cognition, but it may not be the source of it in the way we've assumed. Here's a clue from an unexpected direction. Your brain consumes approximately 20% of your body's total energy, a disproportionately enormous amount for an organ representing roughly 2% of your body weight. Standard metabolic logic would predict that this consumption should spike dramatically during complex cognitive tasks, solving difficult problems, composing music, processing abstract concepts. It doesn't. During intense cognitive effort, brain energy consumption increases by less than 5% above baseline. Compare this to any other high-performance system. A car engine idles at low consumption and spikes under load. A computer processor draws more power rendering complex graphics than displaying a static image. But the brain, supposedly your most computationally demanding organ, maintains nearly flat energy consumption regardless of cognitive load. There is one type of system that behaves this way: a receiver. A radio antenna draws consistent power to maintain signal contact, not because the complexity of the music affects the speaker, but because holding the connection is the work. The symphony is generated elsewhere. This is not a fringe idea. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Roger Penrose, alongside anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, proposed that consciousness may emerge from quantum-level processes occurring inside structures called microtubules, protein scaffolding within neurons that operate at a scale far below traditional synaptic chemistry. In this model, the brain is not manufacturing thought. It is interfacing with a process that operates at a deeper layer of physical reality than neurons can access alone. Now add one more piece. Philosopher and psychologist William James and later neurologist Henri Bergson proposed that the brain's primary function is not generation, but filtration. The nervous system in this framework acts as a reducing valve. Its job is to take an overwhelming field of available information and compress it to the thin stream relevant for moment-to-moment survival. This explains the energy paradox precisely. The brain is not working harder when you think harder. It is narrowing its filter, selecting more precisely from a field that is always present at full intensity. And it reframes something most people experience but rarely examine: the phenomenon of thoughts that seem to arrive from nowhere. Every creative person has experienced this: the solution that appears in the shower, the musical phrase that surfaces during a walk, the insight that interrupts sleep. These don't feel constructed, they feel received, like tuning into something that was already broadcasting. Neuroscience has a name for the state that precedes these moments: default mode network activity, the DMN, the brain's resting state network, which activates precisely when directed analytical thought stops. The DMN doesn't produce random noise, it produces pattern
recognition across vast associative networks, connections that focused attention actively suppresses. Insight doesn't arrive because you thought harder. It arrives because you briefly stopped and the filter opened. Now here's what this means for the voice in your head specifically. Harvard neuroanatomist Jill Bolt Taylor suffered a severe left hemisphere stroke in 1996 and spent the following hours experiencing what happens when the brain's language and narrative centers are progressively disabled. What she described was not the diminishment of consciousness, it was the expansion of it. The relentless internal narrator fell silent. The self-referential loop that normally runs continuously, categorizing, judging, worrying, planning, simply stopped. And what remained was not emptiness. It was a state of vivid, undifferentiated awareness, present, clear, completely unbothered by the voice that had previously occupied most of her mental bandwidth. The internal monologue is not the mind itself. It is one channel the mind runs, specifically the channel associated with left hemisphere linguistic processing, self-referential narrative, and temporal projection into past and future. When that channel goes offline, the mind doesn't go dark. Something else becomes visible. Understanding the mechanics of thought is only useful if it changes how you operate daily. Here are 4 concrete practices drawn directly from this science. Protocol 1. Source tagging. The single most effective cognitive shift available to you costs nothing and takes under 3 seconds. When a thought arrives, particularly a negative, repetitive, or anxiety-generating one, pause and ask one question before engaging with its content. Where did this come from? Not rhetorically, literally investigate. Did this thought arrive from direct sensory experience? From a memory? From an anticipation of a future event? From a pattern you've been running for years? This practice, called cognitive diffusion in clinical psychology, creates a gap between the arrival of a thought and your identification with it. Research published in Behavior Research and Therapy found that diffusion techniques reduced the emotional impact of negative thoughts by up to 50%, not by changing the thought's content, but by changing the observer's relationship to it. The thought loses authority the moment you examine its origins rather than its content. Protocol 2. Scheduled filter release. If insight arrives when focused attention stops, and the neuroscience consistently supports this, then strategic unfocus is not laziness. It is a cognitive protocol. Once per day, schedule a minimum of 20 minutes of genuinely undirected mental activity. Not passive screen consumption, that merely substitutes one stream of directed input for another. Walking without a destination or podcast, sitting without a task, showering without planning. The DMN needs genuine absence of directed input to activate its associative processing. The insight you've been trying to force through focused effort is often waiting on the other side of 20 minutes of doing nothing. Protocol 3. The 11-second audit. Given that your brain is making decisions up to 11 seconds before conscious awareness registers them, the most useful intervention point is not at the moment of decision. It is in the conditions you set before the decision window opens. Practically, before any significant choice, deliberate action, or reactive response, change your physical state first. Stand up, take 3 slow breaths, move to a different location if possible, drink water. These aren't superstitions, they are state change protocols that alter the neurochemical environment in which the preconscious decision is forming. You cannot easily intercept a decision already in progress, but you can change the conditions that shape what kind of decision your nervous system is predisposed to make. The goal isn't to override the 11-second process, it's to improve the environment it operates in. Protocol 4. The ownership question. This is the most direct application of everything covered here. When you notice the internal monologue running, particularly the self-critical, anxious, or repetitive variety, instead of debating its content or trying to suppress it, ask a single question. To whom did this thought occur? The answer will be, to me. And then ask, and who exactly is that? Not as a philosophical exercise, as a genuine investigation, because the moment you look for the you that owns the thought, rather than continuing to inhabit it, you discover something consistent and quietly astonishing. The observer looking for itself cannot find itself as an object. What it finds instead is the act of looking itself, aware, present, and notably quieter than the voice it was investigating. Clinical research on this specific practice, sometimes called self-inquiry or decentering, shows that sustained practice reduces default mode network overactivation, decreases rumination, and improves what psychologists call psychological flexibility, the ability to respond to circumstances from choice rather than habit. You don't silence the voice, you stop being convinced it's the only one speaking. Here is what the evidence actually suggests. Your brain is not a factory sealed inside your skull, manufacturing thoughts from nothing and delivering them to a waiting you. It is a sophisticated biological interface, filtering an information environment far larger than conscious experience can hold, translating signals that originate at scales ranging from quantum microtubules to embodied memory to social and environmental input, and producing from all of that the narrow stream you experience as your inner life. The voice in your head is real, but it is not the totality of what you are. It is one channel, one output, one layer of a system operating at depths that neuroscience is only beginning to map. And here is what that means practically. The thought that tells you you're not enough, not generated by truth, generated by a pattern. The anxiety that loops through the same scenario at 2 a.m., not a warning, a stuck broadcast. The creative insight you've been unable to force into existence, not missing, waiting for the filter to open. You are not the passenger of your thoughts, helplessly carried wherever they go. You are not obligated to believe every broadcast simply because it originates inside your own skull. The highway is full of traffic, Thoughts will keep arriving. The only question that has ever mattered is whether you're standing at the side of the road watching them pass, or whether you're still trying to drive every car. The silence between the thoughts has always been there. You just now know what it is.